change in the fundraising sector has never been greater. But innovations in technology are evolving faster than our ability to understand them. Are these advances good or bad? Do they have unintended consequences? And what is the application to the global fundraising sector? That's what we're here to find out. Welcome to the Fundraising AI podcast, your up-to-date resource for responsible AI for the global fundraising community, hosted by Nathan Chappell and Scott Rosenkrantz.
Here for another episode of the Fundraising AI podcast. I'm Nathan Chappell. I'm excited to be here with Scott Rosenkrantz. I think we both had long days and maybe long weeks. This is a Thursday, and I think we're feeling the Thursday blues, ready for that Friday and the weekend coming up. I don't know, Scott. What do you think?
I think so. I was just on a meeting with the team, and I told them it was just one of those days, and they asked if I want to talk about it, and I said, no, I want to sleep about it.
Just want to sleep about it. And by the way, I'm looking through your back window, and I think you have 3 or 4 deer running across your backyard. Are those deer or dogs?
We got 6 deer.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. I'd rather just do that than get on this podcast. Can I just stare at those and then just sit in silence for about an hour?
Soon enough when you get out of California.
I know. My little secret this week is I bought a house in Tennessee. So any listeners in the Franklin, Tennessee area, I know there's a couple of you because you've been very hospitable. I am going to be making the trek from Southern California to Middle Tennessee, Nolensville, Franklin area, and looking forward to my own deer in my backyard. So we can compare notes. Well, we're here not to talk about deer. We're here to talk about AI. This is one of our episodes. We're going to break down what's happening. And I feel like this week, in the last 2 weeks, I guess, since we've recorded an update podcast, there's been so much stuff and big stuff, not like little stuff. Yeah. I was doing a training with a nonprofit, and in the training, I was using ChatGPT in a live scenario, and I noticed about halfway through, it started taking a lot longer in responding to my prompts, and I thought it was I'm on the free model. I was doing the free model for them. Maybe I just had too many prompts, but then I found out later that they released GPT-401, which is their whole new reasoning model. And were you using 401 during the thing? That's why it was taking longer. Yeah. So we'll talk about that. There's a lot of things, pros and cons and everything in between on 401. Let's start out just by giving a quick shout out / selfish promotion. Although you and I gain nothing from this, so it's not that selfish. I mean, it actually turns out to be a lot more work for us. So Fundraising AI Summit is 12 days away, October 1st. It is going to be freaking amazing. I'm so stoked about it. The closer we get, it feels like it was so long away forever. And then all of a sudden it was like 14 days away. Now it's 12 days away. We have, I don't know, over 40 speakers, 23 sessions, amazing people coming together, from Cassie Kozakov, who I get to interview and do a fireside chat with, which is I'm like a little child, like just so excited for that.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that's going to be really cool. Randy Fernando from the Center for Humane Technology, Afua Bruce. I mean, and then we have a bunch of people flying in from San Francisco. So if you have not registered for the Fundraising AI Global Summit, you're missing out. And even if you are not available, I'd encourage people to literally just try to block off as much time as they can on October 1st and listen live. But if you can't and you register for free, you can access all the videos the day after, and it will be gated to only people who register. It's going to be amazing. Last year I was excited about it. This year I'm beyond excited. I think we really refined our approach to address people where they're at in their learning path on AI, from beginner to intermediate to advanced. We have amazing sponsors, and of course they'll have an opportunity to talk about their products in the lounges, but the sessions themselves are really, even though I'm doing one with Amazon and RKD and more, we're keeping it about fundraising and fundraisers and donors and data and not their products. So it's going to be really, really, really cool. So I know you're presenting and doing a lounge as well. So you ready for that?
Yeah, I'm ready. And I know that our friend Tim Lockey, who is going to be joining us on our next episode, is doing a lot of LinkedIn Lives with some of the presenters, some of the attendees, to just kind of bring notice about what are people talking about. So he and I talked a little bit about the session coming up. I know that you got a recording with him too. So he's doing a great job just kind of leading into that and giving people a little bit of taste of what to expect on October 1st.
Yeah. So no matter where you're at in your AI journey, go to fundraising.ai, click on register. It's really big and bold at the top. Register, free, and be there October 1st. You're going to really enjoy it or your money back. So now that we made that plug, why don't we get into just a couple of the high-level updates? There is something about LinkedIn, something about Salesforce, something about Jensen Huang from NVIDIA at Dreamforce. By the way, I didn't tell you this. I got a text yesterday, the day before. Dreamforce is Salesforce's mega conference that all the movie stars and stuff go to, because I'm assuming they're paid to go. Fundraising AI got a shout out from stage. And
Really?
And it was texted to Mallory Erickson, who texted me, and she's like, "Are you at Dreamforce?" And I'm like, "No." She goes, "Someone from, I think, UNICEF or a large nonprofit organization during on stage gave a shout out to fundraising.ai, which was super
Holy
cool,
crap.
completely organically. That was pretty awesome. So
That is very cool.
yeah, why don't you bring us first through the first three things? Then I'll talk a little bit about Oprah. Then we'll go into some of the updates on OpenAI and what people need to know about GPT-401 and that kind of thing.
Yeah, sounds good. So one guy that I know that we're both connected to on LinkedIn, Garvin Maffett, he messaged me the other day, yesterday I think it was, and I started seeing more of the posts coming out about this, but LinkedIn is apparently training AI on your data now, right? They've been doing that thing for a while where they're asking the expert and asking you to provide an answer, right? I don't think I've ever responded to those, but I always thought that that was training on how to just kind of build their own chatbot. But now they're just sourcing all of your data. So there is a link that you can go to turn off. It's in your settings. There's a section called Data for Generative AI Improvement, and you can deselect it so it's no longer training on your data. We'll put that link in the chat. But I mean, they're not really announcing it, right? I only know about this because I'm on LinkedIn. And there's so much information there. It's less of a crapshoot than Twitter or X is. There's a little bit more, genuine and for good, hopefully, messaging coming from there. At least we're in our echo chambers of that.
That's interesting, because I'd imagine they were doing this for a long time, and then they got some heat for doing it. So they're just being transparent about it. So it's not like it's a new initiative to start collecting data. They've been collecting data all along. It's the user's decision of whether you trade privacy for convenience, right? And I tend to do that on a per case basis, where it's like Amazon. I think I've shared the story before, but if you turn all the personal preferences off of Amazon, it doesn't know what to recommend to you, and you're going to get things like toilet paper and no toenail clippers. In sites like X, I don't really trust X and or Facebook necessarily. That's just my own personal preference. You can trust it if you want. But in those cases, I want to turn those things off because I don't trust what they're going to do with the data. But in LinkedIn, I'm such a big LinkedIn fan, like I'd evaluate that differently. And so it's kind of interesting, because I guess it's what value you're extracting from the service you're paying for or you're getting for free, where you decide, is the lack of privacy worth the convenience that I'll receive?
Yeah, and I use LinkedIn. LinkedIn is really the only social media that I go on. I've abandoned Facebook a long time ago. Instagram, I don't think I ever had an account. So I did jump into deselecting it, and I think I just want to keep it like between us humans, right? I haven't used the AI their AI at least, to edit my prompts, so I do kind of run some things and revise it with ChatGPT. But I do like having it more. These are relationships that I know most of the people I'm connected to, or at least have like some common interests there, and it seems less influencer biased than the other social media platforms.
We'll be interviewing a few people from Microsoft 2 weeks from now, or next week actually. And if people don't know, LinkedIn's owned by Microsoft, so it could be an interesting conversation. To be honest, I think their AI generator in LinkedIn is garbage. I think it's just awful. It actually can take bad human words and make them worse. But GPT, really good at either sparking an idea or making something more concise or condensed. So I use it for that kind of thing. It's like, hey, this is too wordy. Can you shorten it? Or can you help me reframe this so it makes more of a punch, or whatever you're trying to do?
Okay. Yeah, so don't use it then.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'll use it. You won't use it. We're going to compare notes and see who has a better experience in LinkedIn.
I'll see if it recommends toenail clippers to me.
It might. Then we'll know.
Next up, so you kind of mentioned it, Salesforce had their Dreamforce, but they rolled out what they're referring to as Agentforce. And I think Mark Benioff said that he expects 1 billion agents to be working with clients, to be servicing clients. And it's really like infusing Salesforce with this agentive AI that we've been talking about, where they can make decisions for you. They can do service calls. They could do surfacing information into your data and really removing the human from the loop, right? There was an interesting quote there. Someone in the plug for it said, it allows humans to become more human. And at first I was like, well, does it? But again, it goes back to, if it's taking the menial tasks off of your plate and gives you your time back, you can choose to be more human with that time, right?
Certainly. Yeah.
And we've talked about agentive AI before with autonomous fundraising. And I think, we were kind of talking about this earlier today. Like, the difference is, I don't think that we need to get rid of it altogether, right? I think there's value in agentive AI. I know I'm definitely going to be using it, but I think it's when it's trying to replace the human in the relationship, right? Like frontline fundraising, like establishing face-to-face communication, or if it's trying to improve non-human interactions, right? Like letters or advertisements. If it can connect with you and speak your language and make you feel like you are connected to that organization, like maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe it's you're then getting what you want out of that relationship. It's not saying you aren't worth a human's time because a human wasn't dedicating their time to you anyway, right? And so maybe it's that line of, if it's replacing the human, no. If it's not replacing the human, yes.
I think this is a question that we as humans are going to face more and more and more, like almost continuously and in greater ways in the near future. I'm going to skip down to a topic that I put on our notes, was around this idea of acceleration burnout. But we've been working at this really rapid pace. And I mean, people would say since COVID, since the hybrid workforce change or whatever it might be, but I just think like in terms of work and work-life balance, we've been working at this faster and faster pace that AI truly, I believe, for those of us that are using a lot of AI, has increased the amount that we produce. And I think that's happening faster than I thought. And I think it's happening in a way that I'm feeling a different type of burnout of like, how much is too much? And so going back to that, this is a drumbeat on this podcast a lot, is how do we determine, or how do we spend the dividend of time? Do we just do more stuff because we can, or do we use AI to become more human? And I think that's a much easier thing. It's easier to say that than to do it, because just that the convenience. So I just save 5 minutes on that thing. I'm going to do more of the same work. And then we get into this acceleration burnout that is just going to have like tremendous consequences. So I know you've used this before. The other day, we were going to dinner to celebrate a birthday at this Argentinian restaurant, and they didn't have a website and they didn't have the typical like open table thing. And I was on Google and it said, do you want to make a reservation? And I said, sure. What time for people? And it actually did the thing. I think you've done it before in the past, where it literally phone called a person at the restaurant and it's like, stand by, we're going to text you or email you when we have this confirmed. And it sounded like a bot. It was a bot. A human actually called the restaurant. It's like, hey, can I get reservations for 6 people, blah, 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 at the restaurant. And sure enough, like I get this text message, like your reservation's confirmed. That it's a silly example, but what did I do with that extra 5 minutes of me not having to call? It didn't make me more human because I didn't call a restaurant and talk to another human. Did I take that 5 extra minutes and do something meaningful or human with it? Or did I take that and just send 3 more emails? And unconsciously, I most likely sent 3 more emails. And I think that's the whole point, is that we have to be extremely conscious. Kelly Hecht talked about this on the podcast 2 weeks ago, of like being extremely aware of how we are being human and how we're spending time. And that was something I think that was more a decision that was made for us in the past. And this is a retraining of a situation where we have to make that decision on our own in a very conscious way and reprogram our brains on that dividend of time.
And I think it was, I mean, if we look back at COVID, like there was a shift there where people wanted to get out of the rat race, right? Like they didn't want to work in a cubicle. They want to work in a box. They didn't want to just go along because that's what everybody has done for so long. So I don't know if maybe this will give us an opportunity to get out of that, but just like what you're saying, I spent maybe an hour or 2 trying to build a GPT, and it's now saving me a lot of time because it's trained on what I want it to do. But the time that it's saving me, I then get to finish the other things on my task list. So I'm not using that to spend more time with my wife, my kid, or connect with my colleagues. I'm doing the other things that I wasn't able to get done before. So
able to do more. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe at the end of that task list, I'll get to be more human.
That's the fallacy in this, though, right? Is that there is an end to the task list. The task list
Yeah.
will just continue to grow. I will say during COVID, I experienced a real downturn in terms of my busyness, where I wasn't traveling every week, and I took up wood turning, and so I did tons of wood turning. I made tons of pens. I had gifts for people, and just had so much joy in doing that. And I will tell you, in the last 6 months, I haven't turned a single pen,
Yeah.
or bowl, and because I've just been in this rat race. I'm feeling this acceleration burnout, like for real. And I think we are at the forefront of using this from the time we wake up till the time we go to bed. That majority of the population's not there, but when they are there, I do think that we are, as humanity, going to get, I think our burnout will increase, our tolerance for others will just continue to decrease, just because we're going to feel like we're the rat race. The dial is just turned up. So this is a precursor lesson for everyone to be thinking about. When you save time in any type of technology, be active decision maker in what you want to do with that time. So go to the Jensen Huang quote, because when we think, okay, well, maybe there's a threshold and maybe it's just, this is it, right? Like, that's also another fallacy in a myth of like, we're almost here. The Moore's Law thing is done and we're done with exponential growth. But share that. That's pretty crazy.
Right. So Jensen Huang, he's the CEO of NVIDIA, who again is in the center of all this because they're creating the GPUs that everyone is relying on to build these LLMs. He was at Dreamforce and he was talking to Mark Benioff, and he talked about Moore's Law, which, as we know, was, I think, back from the 50s, and it was from can't think of his first name, but he was a scientist at IBM, and his rule was that this law was that technology advanced twofold every year. So basically, you get more computing power, twice as much, or for half the cost, year after year. And it was kind of that slight exponential growth. What Jensen said is, with Moore's Law, over a decade, you might be at 100x improvement. But what we're seeing is closer to 100,000x improvement with recent advancement. So we are still like at the very bottom of this quick uphill incline.
Yeah.
We're barely scraping by. And I mean, if these advancements are moving as fast as they are, like, we can't imagine what's going to happen in 4 months, right? GPT-5 is just right around the corner.
And then going back to so it's Gordon Moore, by the way.
Thank you.
When you're talking about agentive AI, we've talked about agentive AI on this podcast. So in full transparency, 6 months ago, we said next year will be the age of agentive AI, which is essentially where AI can create new AI in very short order. Essentially, an AI is allowed to create a supervisor AI that's authorized to create workers under its control. And that supervisor, instead of running a task from A through Z sequentially, can run a task A through Z all at the same time, right? So all in parallel. So it can create however many tasks there are. It can say there's 12 tasks in a certain project. It can create 12 worker AIs. And instead of worker number 1 being done and passing it to worker number 2 and number 2 to number 3 and 3 to 4, all 12 can start working at the same time, which is insanely impressive, but also a bit scary, where AI is creating AI. This really goes into a quote. I saw it this morning by Liz Grennan. So Connor Grennan's wife is an attorney. She's one of the lead consultants at Quantum Black. So McKinsey has an AI division called Quantum Black. She posted this morning that we're in it's a lot of other things, a great LinkedIn post. We're in the teenage phase between human-centric interactions and autonomous AI co-pilots. So something that we've been talking about for a while is not just next year, it's here and it's now. But she also said something that you and I do every day, that with clients that we work with, nonprofits that are either adopting or not adopting AI, it's around scale and it's around people and around transformation. Her quote I thought was so appropriate. It said, scaling AI is not just a tech problem. It's a transformational challenge. And I think that's where a lot of tension is coming from in the workforce right now, as you're introduced not with just a new piece of software, but a new way of operating and new expectations of higher level work that's done more accurately and faster, and the fear of missing out. And I think all those things are factoring in. I've seen a lot of nonprofits that are starting to get a bit anxious of like, we're behind or we're ahead. And if we're ahead, how do we sustain it? And if we're behind, how do we catch up? None of those questions have anything to do with data or models. Those have to do with people and accepting or rejecting change. And so I've talked about this culture of curiosity a lot, and both personally and corporately, that organizations really, if you're going to start anywhere, start with ways to make your team more curious. Start with ways to make yourself more curious. I wrote an article on LinkedIn about it about 2 weeks ago. There's some really practical tips there. I just think it's such an interesting thing when we hear different leaders talking about the acceleration, so compute power and the Moore's law just being completely blown up and all bets are off because it just the scale is so fast, is that we as humans have to really lean into this idea of curiosity. And then on the other side of that is being conscious of when and how to say no to ensure that we remain inherently human.
Yeah, and I mean, you and I have had many discussions on this where you don't just fail if you don't adopt AI, right? You're not just setting yourself up to kind of fall behind if you don't adopt AI. Even adopting it, but not putting together that plan for transformational change. Like there are organizations that we see that buy into it because everyone else is doing it. There are organizations that we see that buy into it because they think it's going to solve everything, all their issues all at once. Neither of those are going to work, right? So it's not just the yes or no, do you or don't you, but it's how. It's how do we make sure that we're building that foundation culturally,
right?
So that we do see success once we get started.
And all of that, everything you just shared requires an active, deliberate approach, right? I think when we see the vast majority of nonprofits today are using AI passively. So they've adopted something, either shadow AI because it's not authorized by the organization, so people are using GPT underneath their desk to do their work, or they've allowed it and they're like, oh, we're a Copilot office or a Google office or whatever, and you can use whatever AI tools you want. But in either case, it's a more passive approach of like, just use AI and kind of on the fringe and to make your life a little bit easier, versus what you're talking about is really like stepping back from that, allowing the progress to continue, but stepping back and saying, this is what we hope to achieve. This is what we actually not just hope to achieve. This is what we are going to achieve using AI in the next 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, and either improving productivity, improving accuracy, improving worker satisfaction. So I think that's probably one of the biggest disconnects that worries me a bit now. It's like there's a race to adoption. Adoption's very high now. Like in 18 months, we've gone from 5% to different reports are up to like 80% of adoption because AI is in everything now, whether you know it or not. And very, very few organizations are hitting pause to say, okay, where are we going with this? What are we trying to achieve with this? And what are our stated goals? And how do we know what success looks like? So that would be, I think, one really, really big tip for an organization is if you're using AI already, if you're not, the market will take care of you on its own. But how you use it and what you want to achieve from it is something that I think you have to be really diligent and disciplined about.
Yeah. Putting a strategy and a plan in place and not just diving in head first.
Yeah. So of course, probably, at least there's one person out there wondering when we're going to talk about the big tech breakthrough this week. So maybe there's a couple. I know you and I have been waiting like bated breath for a while. Is it going to be GPT-5 when it's coming? Whatever. Is it going to be AGI is here? What is OpenAI up to? But this week, OpenAI unveiled GPT-401. It's really confusing whether it's even called 401 or GPT-401 or just 01. It's even their marketing is not consistent at all. So they're like, what are we supposed to call this? So I'm just like GPT-401. I don't know. Have you tried it? So it came out this week and it was a big buzz.
I've tried it. At first, I was confused because I was in the middle of a training session and out of nowhere, it just started taking much longer. And I'm like, well, this is embarrassing, right? I thought I blamed it on the Wi-Fi, but it turns out that it was a new model from OpenAI. But then when I got home and I kind of read what it was about and I watched all the videos and then I went home to actually try it, there are pros and cons, right? Like I'm so used to just attaching a document, any multiple documents, throwing in images or asking it to create images, like that multimodal part of GPT-4o, I rely on almost all the time. I think every time I interact with it, I'm asking it to create something for me visually, or I'm giving it documents that I wanted to review. So that was a big loss, but I do see a lot of benefits on it taking the time to really sit and think and evaluate its response before just jumping into something.
Yeah. And so for people who aren't following this as closely, so 401 is actually 401 preview. So it's in beta. And the reason why it doesn't allow for multimodal because it's in beta. So if you're used to your normal GPT 4.0 and you're like, it can do all your things, you're going to be disappointed. The reality of the beta is that you can understand how this new model essentially checks itself and reasons. It knows how to spell the word strawberry, or actually, and more accurately, it knows how many of the letter R are in the word strawberry, which 4.0, I don't know if it does now, but it didn't. And it just has improved reasoning. So you can actually see it where it says thinking and then questioning and adding context. And so it is slower because it's doing all those things. But I believe the preview mode is exactly that. It's beta, and that when enough users are gone through it and they've kind of improved some of that, they'll add multimodal to it. I would imagine that has to be part of it. But I do like at least the idea that it's more accurate. I actually, in the writing, I don't think it's any better. And I don't know if that's because I'm just used to 4.0 and I feel like maybe I'm biased toward it, or 401 is just better for more linear kind of thinking or research type projects and things like that versus context or content.
I this is going back a ways, and I probably saw it on YouTube or something, but somebody said, like, when you ask GPT-4 or GPT-4.0 might have been out of time to put together an essay, like a 5,000 word essay, it's doing that in one draft, right? And could you ever ask a human to go and write a 5,000 word essay in one draft without any revision? So that's really what O1 is doing. It's kind of putting together the again plan of what it's going to craft, and then going back, revising, reviewing, and then still doing an incredibly fast time.
Yeah.
But it's not just that immediate draft. It has its own internal thinking of making changes, making corrections, kind of seeing the broader scheme of things and reiterating as a result.
Yeah, I'm excited about how this plays out. I have no doubt that this is a better path because it fixes pretty much one of the main fundamental flaws of GPT 4.0 and its lack of reasoning. It doesn't understand words, it doesn't understand characters, and this does. So to have more context and be able to do that, that actually leads me to what my favorite AI tools that I found this week, which is by an organization called 539, all spelled out 539. The website is forecast.safe.ai, and it is like the conspiracy theorist dream AI tool. It allows you to ask any question of like, what's the probability of AI destroying humanity? Or what's the probability of humans being on the moon or on Mars in the next 50 years? Or whatever, or who's going to win the election? And it does the same thing. It's almost like when I saw that, which has already been out, I'm like, OpenAI stole their idea of how to like have an AI improve itself. And this is insane. So forecast.safe.ai, it's super, super cool. So I'm on this think tank for the Nonprofit Alliance, and there's a conversation this week about California State Assembly Bill 1047. If people haven't heard it, there's a chance that Governor Newsom is going to sign into law this bill that basically puts anyone who's spending over $100 million on building a foundational model, it actually monitors them. They have to register it. It's got some really significant implications for the big tech industry. I think it's going to kill competition, my personal thing. I think it has really negative implications for universities that are doing a lot of AI research, but there are some good things with it, is that each of these AI systems at a certain level have to have a kill switch, meaning they could be turned off, because a lot of times these models are distributed like all around the world. And so there's no kill switch. And so there's definitely some good things. But the question on this alliance, the nonprofit alliance, was like, is Newsom going to sign it? And it's some really, really smart people on the call, and 0 people had 0% idea on if he was going to or not. It's like, well, he could or he could not. And it was just kind of this 50-50 thing. So that's the question. Put it into this website. So again, you just go into forecast.safe.ai. Question is, will SB 1047, the California AI bill, be signed into law? And it is insane. It goes through this entire reasoning of like, well, here's what the bill is. And then it brings through all these checks and balances where it's like, okay, on one side, I'm going to say yes because this bill, blah, blah, blah. But I'm also going to take a counterpoint of view and say no, because these are the big people and the tech companies that are against this, and they hold a lot of lobbying power. And then it rationalizes and says, well, Governor Newsom typically has voted for things in the past that were like this. And so it makes a prediction, and then it adds more context, and then it makes another prediction all the way down to the very end. And in this case, it said the answer is 70% likely that Newsom will sign the bill. It is, and I'm so curious to know. I mean, all of it is very logical. Like, I mean, it's like I could read this and be like, oh, it's going to happen. And it could be totally wrong. So I am just like kind of like fly on the wall watching this play out. And if he does sign this bill, which is coming up soon, because he hasn't said it, he is or is not, I'm going to be a believer. Like it makes a really, really rational case that is way beyond human comprehension to essentially synthesize all these things and debate itself to come up with a final answer.
Are you putting together a list of questions that you are going to ask it next?
I've already asked it all about the end of humanity and all those things. So
did you ask it if Elon Musk is going to turn into Howard Hughes?
No, what's the probability that Elon Musk turns into Howard Hughes? 100%. It actually is optimistic about the future of humanity, which I was pleasantly surprised about. So
that's good. That's promising.
Yeah. So again, anyone wants to check this out, actually, we could even put the link. You can, once you create this situation, whatever question you have, you can share that link and it will bring, like I shared it with you, and you saw the exact reasoning all the way down to what it did back and forth. So we'll put that in the show notes just so someone can see the example. But this is literally for the person like me. Like I am the person that I ask so many questions. I'm the most annoying child on the face of this earth. Because like, what about this? And what about this? And do you think this will happen? And this is probably why in my master's, I studied international economics and geopolitics. So I'm always interested about all the things that you know and all the things you don't know and what influences really big situations. This is like the dream come true.
I think now if I ever call you and I can't get a hold of you, you're probably spending your time on this.
It's probably likely. You can ask it, what is the likelihood that Nathan is actually asking you questions right now and not answering my phone call? And it'll be like 99%. Yeah. So all that to say, super, super cool. There's a lot of other updates this week. I think a lot of them, when I look down at the list that you and I curate, a lot of it had to do with scale. It's about like Meta finalizing supercomputing cluster of 100,000 H100 server chips. It's about Microsoft spending $100 billion on Stargate, that massive computer system that will be done not that long.
$100 billion. Like,
yeah.
I was thinking about that. How do you come up with that budget? Do you just throw as many zeros as possible after a one and say, we could probably do it here?
Yeah, and that's a collaboration between Microsoft and OpenAI. I think the interesting thing about that is because they're not building, and people have to recognize, they're not building a computer cluster for today's AI, right? Very, very clearly. And if there's something that keeps me up at night, the number of zeros that you were just talking about on these numbers have nothing to do with AI that we're using today. They have everything to do with AGI and essentially where AI is going, because AGI will be much more in computer intensive. So that goes into robotics and that goes into and you're going to need massive, massive computer clusters. And these companies are at the forefront and they're smart enough to be projecting out not 12 months, but 4 years, 5 years where AGI comes to be. And so, yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, 100 billion. I was talking to Willika yesterday from the Resource Alliance in the UK, and she said that I think she talked to someone at Microsoft, said that they're spending $1 billion a month on building new computer centers, which actually is a fair assessment because 100 billion, this Stargate is projected to be at 100 billion. So yeah, about $1 billion a month to build a computer, right? It's pretty unfathomable.
Unfathomable.
Yeah. I mean, Google, Amazon with Claude, the list goes on and on and on about scale, like massive, massive scale. I think we'll end the conversation at scale on the conversation that Oprah Winfrey did last week. I know you haven't watched it yet, but you're going to watch it. And I can't wait for you to provide to me what your analysis is. You've got essentially 3 billionaires and a bunch of non-billionaires talking about, so Oprah, Sam Altman, Bill Gates, all billionaires, talking about inequality, people losing jobs. And I would say for me, so if anyone hasn't tuned into this, ABC did this special called AI and the Future of Us, Oprah Winfrey special. It's now on Hulu and ABC. And I took away from it is that we have billionaires that actually can't comprehend what job loss is. So for them, it's like, this is really exciting and this is going to improve humanity so much. But yes, there's going to be a lot of job loss and whatever. And if you're a billionaire, like you don't know what the price of milk is. Like you just don't. I mean, this is like whenever you see those things, it's virtually impossible to truly empathize with like a person who's like scraping by and like, what happens if I lose my job? So there's that. And you're going to do an analysis on this when you watch it. I am super interested when you do the analysis on whether or not AI picks up on whether or not the overall sentiment of that conversation was positive, like optimistic about AI or negative about AI. So I want you to do that when you do your analysis. I'm going to, on the next podcast, I'm going to grind you on it to find out what you found out.
All right. That's going to be my weekend homework.
Yeah. I tried to get the transcript. The transcript's not available, but you came up really quickly with an innovative solution to doing that. And it didn't involve any Russian hackers. So I applaud you for that.
That you know of.
Well, that you're telling me. Right.
Yeah.
Well, this is it for the Fundraising AI podcast. It was super fun. Scott, always enjoy being able to nerd out and just talk through things. There's so much more. I mean, it's just like the list goes on and on. You and I literally just have to cherry pick what we want to talk about on a weekly basis. Next podcast is going to be with Tim Lockey, talking about AI for anyone and his product that he announced and kind of his views on that. And we can definitely give him a hard time because he's a guy that 2 years ago we had breakfast and he told me that nonprofits shouldn't be thinking about AI because they don't even have enough data. And he's come a long way. It's been,
now he has his own course and created his own AI replica.
Deep fake of himself. Yeah. We have to check when he's on our podcast to see if it's really him.
Yeah.
So thanks everyone for joining. Great to be here, Scott. Always fun. And we will catch you on the flip side.
Yeah. I'll see you on the next one.
Take care, everyone. Bye.